welcome everyone. Thank you for coming along. Thank you to Adidas 510 for all of the support they give us to make these talks happen. And tonight I would like to welcome Naomi Buys, who has, can you believe this? She's been climbing 27 years. It's a long time. So she's got a huge wealth of knowledge to share with us tonight. She has vast experience across lots of facets of our sport, and that's trad, bouldering, and sport, and has performed really well across all three areas. So it's really great to have Naomi here tonight, give us a talk on coming back after injury or a setback, which I think all of us experience at some point during our climbing careers. Without further ado, over to Naomi. Thanks,
Hello,
Naomi. I wish we
everybody.
could give you a round of applause.
Oh, a virtual round of applause. Thank you. Lovely to see everybody. I'm going to start off by just sharing my screen briefly. So, what I want you to do in this talk, first of all, imagine that you're on a journey. So, when you're on your journey, you come across this road ahead closed and a lovely diversion. Would you turn around and go home if you saw that? Well, it does depend on how much you want to reach your destination. Is it even still possible to get there? In most cases, there will be a way for you to reach your destination. It just might take you a bit more time and effort to get there. So, applying that to injuries, illness, and other interruptions in your climbing, it can all knock us off the smooth journey to achieving our climbing goals. So, if that happens, are we flummoxed? Do we maybe feel discouraged to the point of giving up? Well, what I want you to start with is thinking about what your climbing goals are. So just all take a minute and have a think about what your goal is at the moment. And Rebecca's just going to put up a poll question so that we can all find out what everybody else thinks. So the question is, what is your main climbing goal currently? So if you make your choice and submit, then we can have a look at the results. It could, if it's a certain grade or a climb, it could be a skill. And here we're talking about maybe being brave or being able to do 159 or whatever it might be, being more flexible. Or if you have absolutely no goals, you're just happy to go with the flow, see where the wind blows you. Right, everybody made a choice? Should we have a look at the results? Okay, so it's fairly across the board. Those of you who have no goals, lucky you, you'll be so happy. Okay, so now that you've got that in mind, have a think about this. You've got to know where you're going, what your destination is, to find a way around an obstacle. Would you agree with that? So in almost every case in climbing, when you hit an obstacle, you can still reach your goal if the goal means enough to you to put in the extra effort to achieve it. Realistically, sometimes you might have to adjust your expectations. It might not be possible to reach that goal anymore, or the diversion to get there might be more than you can handle. So my experience through my 27 years of climbing, as Emma so kindly pointed out, my goals have naturally shifted anyway over time. So it started off just as a hazy, like, oh, I want to get better. I want to be able to keep up with my brother, who was really good. And then I did get better and I made it onto the British bouldering team. And then my goals were a lot more specific. I wanted to make international semis or finals. I wanted to win national comps. And then after that, it shifted again. I wanted to do well at trad, then it was grade specific, like E7 or pushing myself on sighting. Then it was more, I want to be brave. Then it went more onto like, well, I can climb technically hard, or I'd like to do the magic 8A grade, or that went down, 8A plus, 8B. And then it was a specific climb. There was a climb called Wicked Gravity that I really wanted to do. And that occupied my mind for 4 years, would you believe? And more recently, I realised that bouldering, I actually haven't done any hard bouldering. So I do have a current goal at the moment. I would love to climb Font 8A. So some of those goals in my life, they get a big fat tick. I can happily say that I succeeded at them. But some of them have been massively affected or even derailed by various setbacks. And I want to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So the first section is injuries. I had my first major injury at age 18. I snapped the cruciate ligament in my left knee, and it took a long time to heal, about 8 to 9 months. But in reality, I was so young and juicy that it healed really quickly. And all the good climbing that I'm really proud of, I've done after that injury. So I wouldn't say it really set me back that much. The second major injury, definitely a different story. I unfortunately managed to spiral fracture my tibia and fibula. And it took a year, I'd say, before I was able to climb confidently again. And that was in the middle of being on the British team, so it had a massive effect. Another big injury I had was a tore a tendon sheath in my wrist, which is a complete bummer injury for a climber, because it's really hard to do anything to train and keep strong when that's happening. And it did take about 3 months off my climbing. I've had loads of others: fingers, shoulders, whiplash I get all the time. I think I just fall really badly, and I'm always like, oh no, that's going to be 2 or 3 days out now. I'm sprained ankles and things. That's my most recent one. Really nasty sprain actually on my ankle. So what about you guys? Have you ever been injured? Are you here because you want to learn how to overcome your own injuries, or just curiosity? So we're going to do another poll. And I want to know if you have had a serious injury that's caused you to have more than 3 months out of climbing, or if you've had minor injuries, or if you're one of the lucky ones who's never sustained a climbing injury. And then I want you to tell me if you're currently injured in any way. Okay. Shall we get the results? Oh, okay. I'm surprised that as many as 9% have never been injured. You must have some secret to success. Very good. And I'm glad to hear that there's more of you not injured than are at the moment. But that's still quite a high percentage, 41%. So anyway, those of you who have answered that you have had an injury or you currently are injured, you're in that percentage of people who have that. You understand that sickening feeling when it happens. You know the ramifications on your climbing. It's just heartbreaking. And I came across a great Instagram post from Olivia Lee. I'm just going to share that now, 1 second. There we go. So Olivia Lee, her caption reads, actually this photo was taken right before I fell off and broke my ankle in 2017. At the time I was devastated. So it's normal to feel devastated initially when you're injured. It is going to happen. But wallowing in self-pity is like sitting in your car in front of that road closed sign, crying. It's not going to get you anywhere. Eventually, you need to make a plan of action. You need to stick to it. So Olivia says, I remember it lighting a fire inside me to come back stronger. So I worked on my weaknesses and did every one I could with a big pot on my foot. I did pull-ups, isometric holds and core daily and came back a beast. Oops, sensitive that. So obviously Olivia is a very determined and motivated climber, possibly more so than most other people. But I think we can all learn a lot from her experience. So what can you do if you're injured? Now, we haven't got time tonight to cover every possible scenario, but I do have some tips and ideas for the most common climbing injuries. So now I can go back to that one that I wanted to show you. 1 second. Here we go. So leg lower limb injury. This is my my lovely ankle post recent strain. So what can you do? Obviously you've got to stay off your legs, so climbing's pretty much out. You're not going to be wanting to land on an injury like that, or get a climbing shoe on if it's a knee or an ankle or whatever. But obviously fingerboarding, and everybody's going to say, oh, you can fingerboard and get really strong. If you've got access to a fingerboard, that's great. There's other ways of doing it. Door frames, pull-up bars are easy to put up even in rented accommodation, if that's a good alternative. And you can work things like pull-ups and one-arm strength, which most women, really, let's face it, we could improve our upper body strength. So one-arm strength is something that I really wanted to work at with my recent opportunity of a dodgy ankle. And there's all sorts you can do to help that. Weighted, assisted one-arm pull-ups, measurable increases, or if you want to do normal pull-ups, core workouts. So a lot of core workouts involve your legs as well, don't they? Planks and press-ups, but there's all sorts of things you can do if you're willing to improvise. Legs resting on a chair, a sofa, a buffet, and you can have a really good workout. Stretching, great opportunity. Normally that gets neglected in climbing life. And my personal favourite that I've come up with recently, chair aerobics. I mean, you want to get a bit of a heart pumping workout, don't you? So did you know that in 10 minutes on a chair you can get a real sweat on and definitely get your heart pumping? Okay, so next one, elbow tendinitis. Yeah, so this is a chronic one, rather than usually it's not acute, although it might happen all of a sudden if you do a deep lock. What can you do if your elbows are bugging you? Because fingerboarding, pull-ups, all that sort of thing are just going to aggravate it. Well, it's a good time to work on being fit, cardio, running, cycling, stretching. Balance is often overlooked. There's a lot of exercises you can do to work on your balance, including climbing slabs and stuff at home, because obviously at the moment it's not so easy to go to a climbing wall or to the crag. So here's an important thing. If you have an injury like this, a chronic problem with your elbows, you will no doubt research and get antagonistic exercises to do to rehab it. But that's really important that you keep going with these. And I'll touch on this later, but if you have a vulnerability to something like this and you learn how to heal it with antagonistic exercises and rehab, just build that into your routine. Make sure that you continue doing that, because your vulnerability will come back if you don't stay a bit off. Golfer's elbow, that's the bit inside your elbow, is really exacerbated by deep lock-offs and slopers. So you can still climb, just avoid those things. And tennis elbow, it tends to be pinches that set that off. So go for it. Just make sure that you're careful and you listen to your body and avoid getting stuck into something that's going to aggravate it. Okay, next. Who hasn't had a finger injury? They are so annoying. Such a small thing can cause such a lot of heartache. So we ask a lot of our fingers, don't we, as climbers? They're a point of contact, and we really we need them for hanging off our fingertips, as people say. So what can you do? Again, cardio, stretching, balance, core workouts, all the same stuff. Now, upper body strength on a pull-up bar, maybe not a fingerboard, but a pull-up bar, and there's an amazing amount of versatility of things that you can work on that are going to help you climbing. And you just have to be careful that it's not digging into sore pulley. If you get a bar that has foam wrapped around it, or you can even do that yourself, a towel, something like that. But yeah, there's all sorts that you can do. And I'm going to dispel a myth here. If you have a finger injury, don't feel that that's the end of your climbing. A healing finger injury needs to know what it's going to have to do. So you need to teach it to climb. Just be gentle. Don't push it. Obviously, in the very acute phase of a finger injury, you do have to rest it, let inflammation die down. But yeah, you can still climb with a finger injury. Shoulders, that's a pretty common one. And when I say upper limb, I mean, I'm including things like my wrist injury in this. Anything that's going to stop you from hanging off your arms. It's really upsetting for a climber when this happens, isn't it? We do rely a lot on our upper body. So is it game over? Is there anything that you can do? Again, you've got all the classic things, the cross training, the cardio, the running, the cycling. Stretching and balance and core workouts, and climb focusing on footwork. So it's a good opportunity to do drills of good technique, obviously being really careful not to exacerbate an existing injury. And again, as with your elbows and your fingers, if you've got a vulnerability and you learn how to rehab it and stabilize it, make sure that you build that into your training going forward. So if you do have any questions, by the way, about specific ways of rehabbing, or if there's questions about the workouts that you can do, then save them up, because we are doing a Q&A at the end. Okay, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about injury avoidance, because it's a whole big topic for another talk. We're not talking about injury avoidance tonight, really, but it can be summed up like this. You do feel sorry for yourself if you fall foul of an injury once, but you feel angry if it happens twice. It's like if you fall into a pothole that you didn't see, you're going to feel sorry for yourself. If you fall into the same pothole again, you've really only got yourself to blame. So best will in the world, things will take you by surprise that you haven't anticipated. Don't spend too much time dwelling on what you could have done differently to avoid that injury, because you'll never, ever be able to turn back time and stop it from happening. But hindsight is a wonderful teacher. So we can analyse the circumstances that led up to an injury, and you can avoid those in future. So, for example, get used to arranging your pads properly if you're bouldering outside. Don't ignore that little rock that's sticking through the gap, or if you think, oh, I might swing and fall over there where there's no pads, sort it out, do something about it. Make sure your landing's clear. Don't think, oh, I won't move that water bottle on the pad, on the mat, because I probably won't land on it. If you've got a little voice telling you, this is probably one go too many, I think I've just had enough goes on this already, don't ignore the little voice. You've really only got yourself to blame if you do. And trust me, I am speaking from experience here too. Right, so I want to move on to the next section of illness. Now, chronic illness doesn't just rob you of a chunk of time out of your climbing career. It's something that you have to adapt to live with it always. You might not feel that this section applies to you if you don't consider yourself to have a chronic illness, but more climbers than you know will have to deal with some ongoing health issue. It could be asthma, a recurring bad back, headaches, migraines, something that happens to them frequently. Obviously, we're also talking about much more serious things here. So it's different for everyone, and it's not like one size fits all. So my experience, my biggest setback in climbing has been suffering from a very, very nasty autoimmune disease called ulcerative colitis. I'm not going to dwell on it too long or go into too much detail, but it's a disease that has periods of flare-up and remission. And there's no cure. There's only treatments that try and induce and prolong remission. So that includes suppressing the immune system as well. So the flare-ups do interfere with climbing in a really, really big way. It causes a lot of pain, abdominal inflammation, exhaustion, amongst many other things. So was it game over for my climbing goals when I was diagnosed with this 16 years ago? Well, the first thing that I did was to research elite athletes who had succeeded despite having ulcerative colitis. And I was reassured to find that there were quite a few, including some international sports stars and Olympic medalists. I think you probably all heard of Sir Steve Redgrave, Olympic champion 5 times despite having ulcerative colitis. But I'm not going to lie, for every success story, there were hundreds of sad ones. And pushing through something like that requires an incredible amount of drive that not everybody has. Now, I've got a bit of drive, but I definitely didn't have the drive for being an elite competition level athlete with a setback like that. So I had to change my focus away from competitions and being on the British team. I spent more time climbing outside when I felt up to it, and that was fine. I soon managed to achieve good things in sport climbing. I set my sights to climbing 8B. And I picked, like I said, I picked a route, Wicked Gravity. I got really obsessed with the route, and I nearly did it after one season. I fell off actually, trying to clip the belay because the rope snagged under the roof. And then I had a bad flare up, and then another, and then another. And then after 4 years, I still hadn't climbed the damn route. And it was a really bitter experience for me. It became this big thing in my life. Now, thankfully, I've got a wonderful husband, Jordan. He's really supportive, and he helped me to seize the opportunity when I had a good month, and I sealed the deal. I was so relieved, but I decided I was never going to do that to myself again. So I decided to operate, and I do this now by just climbing what falls into my lap. So don't worry too much, push myself if I feel good. Sometimes climb something that I'm really proud of. I've done loads of hard climbs since then, but not pressuring myself. So if you have an ever-present recurring malady that causes you trouble and you have to live with it, how can you deal with it? So I'm just going to share my screen again for the next one. Okay, oh, that's a picture of me on Wicked Gravity, the lovely Malham Cove. So chronic illness. Climb when you can. I mean, with almost all illnesses, you will have good days and bad days, good weeks and bad weeks, good months and even good years and bad years. So you just have to take the opportunity when you can. You do want to exercise. You might feel ill, you might feel rotten, and your body doesn't want to do stuff, but your brain does. You're never going to take that away. And there's actually a really good example of an athlete. She was an Olympic skater actually, called Kira Maguire, and she has ulcerative colitis. And I just thought I'd read you this, that she said, "I remember during one hospital stay, I was worrying about muscle loss and weakness. I actually would periodically get out of bed and do a few bodyweight squats in my hospital gown with IVs and all. After 5 squats with no weight, I would be sore, but I felt like I needed to activate those muscles, even if in a minor way." So you can't stop that feeling. You want to exercise, you want to keep your climbing muscles, you don't want to atrophy. But at the end of the day, you can't override something like that. Your body does what it does. So what can you do? I mean, I've had times where I really wanted to train and I just couldn't. And I would think, well, I'll do some stretching, and I'd lie down on the floor to do some stretching, and I couldn't even do a sit-up, couldn't raise my legs. So what can you do? Well, just lying on the floor, put your feet together, knees out in frog position, and just lie there. It's a stretch. Let gravity do its thing. So even that is useful, it's something. But most of the time it's not going to be that bad. But you may not have energy. I mean, depression, all sorts of things can cause you to feel like this on a regular basis. So what can you do? Plan low energy sessions. So some things like fingerboarding can be done in a way that doesn't require power. It doesn't require fire and energy. You can just do something that's a bit more passive, but it's something, and you've got to hang on to that. So last word on this. Suffering from chronic illness it's a very lonely place to be. It is easy for it to lead to depression or even be depression. If you've got a friend who's affected by something like this, one thing that you can do is keep in touch, maybe give some emotional support. Let them know that you've not forgotten them just because they can't play out with you at the moment. Next thing, interruptions. So what else can interrupt your climbing goals? Could be something really positive, actually. It could be a new job, your career could take off, you could have started a family, for instance. It's definitely going to interrupt your climbing. So these type of events, they involve a decision-making process. You know that it's going to have an effect on your climbing goals, but you've got to decide if it's worth it. And of course, if you take a decision like that, you've decided that that's more important than your climbing goals. But that doesn't mean that you can't have any climbing goals. It just means that you have to moderate them. So to illustrate it, it's like you might have a day out at the beach instead of 2 weeks all inclusive in the Maldives, you know. You can still have fun. So other stuff can interrupt you too, less pleasant things like family crises and financial worries, or of course a pandemic. That's kind of really got in the way of everybody's training and climbing. So these things, they rob you of time, energy or opportunity to go climbing, don't they? And you really, really, really want to go, but other things just get in the way. So what can you do if you're interrupted by something like this? Okay. Right, here we've got your lovely multitasking woman there. So when you have interruptions like this, time is often an issue. So you need to plan short sessions. There's loads of things you can do in 20 minutes, half an hour, that are probably the best training that you could do for your climbing. Certain fingerboard routines, cardio, yeah, you can definitely get a good sweat on in 15 minutes if you do it right. Same with core. Endurance. So if you are restricted in this pandemic to not very many facilities in your home, how do you train endurance? If you're not lucky enough to have a board, it's something a bit sad, really. But did you know you can train endurance on a fingerboard? There's all sorts of things you can do on a fingerboard, and endurance is definitely one of them. So if you want to know more about that, you can ask me in the Q&A. So what about multitasking? Stretching at the same time as doing something else on the telephone, watching TV. If you're lucky enough to be able to stretch while you're working, not everybody is. And here's the biggest tip: make the most of your opportunities. So if something comes your way unexpectedly and you get a chance to climb or train, don't waste it. Make the most of it, because who knows when it's going to come again. So it's about appreciation. Okay. So how am I doing for time? Right. In conclusion, something stops you from achieving what you had as your goal, whether it's a temporary setback or a permanent one. It's normal and natural to grieve a bit. I know I did. I felt really cheated of the opportunity to ever be a really good climber. But don't let it leave you bitter, because these things, honestly, they can happen to anyone. And I just I absolutely had to share this, even though it's not a woman. If you've heard of Aidan Robert, oh come on, where's it going? There we go. It just popped up on my Instagram this week, and I just had to include it. Basically, Aidan, he burst through the glass ceiling of British bouldering limits last year, like far and above the best British boulderer. I spotted this post, and you know, despite all that, he's currently injured. A difficult, bad injury, but he's got his past achievements behind him, and he's got a good attitude of patience for his recovery, so he will be back. Even all the best climbers are prone to this. Look at our very own Shauna Coxey. I mean, she's had so many setbacks, she's had her fair share of injuries, but she's still one of the best in the world because she's got this drive to succeed. So yeah, with good planning, you can still achieve your goals, even if you hit a diversion. Of course, it's inconvenient, it's annoying, it's stressful, but it's not game over necessarily. You might be forced to work your weaknesses that you never would have addressed before. You will have appreciation for when things are going good. So it does fuel your fire. If you're suffering from an injury, it will pass and you will be psyched more than you were before. If you're suffering from illness, then the good days, you treasure them, you value them. You'll have more empathy for others. So if somebody else is going through something similar to you, you'll be able to understand it and be able to help them. And you can help yourself deal with similar setbacks in the future. The journey that you are on in your climbing goals, that creates your future self. My setbacks, well, they've made me who I am, and I'm nothing but grateful for all the amazing things that I've enjoyed in my climbing life. We can't all be Shauna, but remember that what you achieve is somebody else's amazing. And if you choose to let your interruptions shape you into the best person you can be, you could hopefully be one who climbs really well too. So, time for Q&A.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, if you use the raise hand feature on the reactions tab, then it'll be easy for me to spot if anybody's got a question.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Naomi. I just missed what you said there, but I think you said if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my internet cut out. It's been useless tonight.
Oh,
Thank you so
one.
much. Yay.
Okay, Perry. Can people unmute themselves, or do they need authorization?
They should be able to. Yeah.
I did. That was really great. Thank you so much. That was really encouraging and concrete. You threw something in there which you said people could ask in the Q&A, so I'm going to take you up in it.
Right, go on.
Endurance and fingerboard.
Right, okay. So here's one for starters. A big flat hold. What kind of fingerboard do you have?
The Easy Beastmaker.
The Easy Beastmaker. So you can adapt this to your strength, but probably start with the biggest slots, not the big jugs, something flat. Mm-hmm. 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, just hanging. Times 10, 10 minutes rest, repeat. If you can succeed at that, then you're doing something amazing. If it's too difficult, make it a more positive juggy hold. If you succeed at that, you can lengthen the hang time and shorten the rest. So you do say 35 seconds hang, 25 seconds rest. My good friend Tanya shared that one with me. And yeah, it's definitely keeping me sane at the moment.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anyone got any more questions? Let's have a look at the chat. If you're not brave enough to ask a question and raise your hand, please put some in the chat.
Oh,
Can you recommend any good resources for antagonistic exercises?
well, it depends what it's for. They're all very specific. So, you know, say for instance, with elbows, it is going to be different depending on whether you've got pain on the inside or the outside of your elbow, if it's for shoulders. So really, you have to do specific research for your issue. And if you put it into a Google search with climbing in the search as well, you'll get better, more specific responses that will help you with your climbing training. Ooh.
Yeah, Rebecca's just into the chat from a talk that we did earlier this month, or maybe in February, by Nina Tappin, who's a physio. So that's a good resource for getting those sorts of exercises and researching a bit about what your needs are.
But what I will say is, every time you pick up an injury, you do this research, and it's in the bank. You know, it's all important experience, and you'll probably have to use it again and again if you're as keen as I am,
Yeah.
and not knowing what your limits are.
Anyone else got any more questions?
Oh, finger strength training, renting and no access to a fingerboard or a pull-up bar. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's things you can do. Pinch blocks, definitely, it's a really good one. So have you got access to weights, Katie? I don't know if you've got anything.
Sorry,
Those like ones that, oh,
you can make
Sorry,
your
my
own
internet
pinch blocks
broke today.
actually. If you're quite handy, I mean, you can buy them with varying different sizes to make it harder, and you attach them to a weight and you can do hangs like that. But nothing's really going to substitute for pulling with your body weight.
you can
So
get those.
legs, and yeah,
You
there's
can
rigs.
get those things, can't you? Those rigs that you put around the door, and if you've got the right sort of door. And we had one when we were traveling where you put the pull-up bar through the door, and then we had a fingerboard that bolted to the pull-up bar.
You've just got to be a little bit careful about how energetic you do the exercises, because there's definitely some good videos of rig fails.
Yeah, I was just about to say, however, none of that is legit, but it works. Just don't let it fall off.
Yeah, so yeah, you definitely can get some that don't involve drilling and damaging a rented property. And let's face it, it would be a good investment, because who would have thought we'd be here a year later, after the first coronavirus lockdown? So who knows what the future's going to hold, but definitely things are changing, and being able to train at home is really important. You can certainly strengthen the antagonistic muscles in your fingers as well by things like, you can get those exercises where you have a rubber ring around each finger and you can extend, or you could just stick your hand in a bowl of rice and do the same thing. So that's really important. People neglect that a lot, unfortunately. Ooh, thanks, Jane. Rehabbing a knee injury. Oh, with a chronic hand problem as well. Oh, you poor thing. Okay, so rehabbing a knee injury is going to involve specific physio exercises to do for your lower legs anyway. So often not involving a chronic hand issue. But for climbing, you see, it is different, because rehabbing doesn't necessarily involve climbing, and climbing is what we're interested in, isn't it? The chronic hand problem is the bigger issue. Can I ask you any more details, Mary? Is it something that is this long term?
Is it okay if I speak? I don't know.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay.
Please
Sorry.
do.
I'm kind of a bit of an old trout, and at least I am. I'm in my 60s, and I started climbing when I was 59. After many years of faffing about with horses and riding at a reasonable level. And the hand injury was one that I sustained riding. And it's just a real instability in where my thumb joins my hand and the first couple of knuckles, the first two fingers. So it's very unstable. So fingerboarding for me is really difficult because I can't do it with my right hand. But I've always had very strong legs. So for me, climbing was fantastic. Push, jump, brilliant stuff. But I fell just walking into the garden and really hammered my left knee because I fell with my ankle underneath me.
Oh, what a shame.
And in a way, fortunately, that was at the start of lockdown. So if I was going to have a year out, this was kind of the year to do it. And we built a little home bouldering wall, very small one, because, needs must. And so now it's at a point where I've got some specific exercises that I can do to increase mobility because I've actually got, that potential now. It's actually moving. And I've been rehabbing it myself just by gosh and by golly. But when I read in books and what you were saying, well, if you can't do this, then you can work on your upper body strength. But I have trouble with that because I can't use my hand in that way.
Yes,
I
can see.
I'm looking now, I want to get back out climbing. The walls are going to be opening. I can go back out onto real rock. It's not so much, my goal was I want to climb the 6s at age 60. And I'm kind of there with a view to climbing the 7s when I hit 70.
I love it. It's great.
I'm not going to bloody give up. I love this sport so much.
Well, you've already got the greatest possible advantage there, which is some psych and some drive, because without that you wouldn't do anything. You have to just accept that you're going to have to take it baby steps until your leg can catch up to your psych. As far as a hand goes, have you tried having some tape, kinesthetic tape, or more supportive tape? Does that make any difference to you?
I rock tape. I actually use rock tape on both knees because, again, old lady, likes to push with legs. And I use rock tape on my hand as well. And it is actually really helpful. I do struggle, I struggle with baby steps. If I were a horse, I could look at me and I could say, okay, 2 months box rest and we'll set up this program for you. But when it comes to myself, it's like, I don't know. Baby steps, it doesn't really fit with my.
No, but the hand thing is it sounds like it's going to be with you for a long time, and you have to work around that. But the knee injury, it will get better, and so you have to just take the long view, work on what you can work on. Things like stretching, core. I mean, core is so important in your climbing. Can't overemphasize this enough. Balance, center of gravity, work on being able to move with proprioception. You need to focus on what you can do and not what you can't do, and the other things will come in time. You have to be patient.
I cannot thank you enough for that. That has just, I've got tears in my eyes.
Oh.
I do. That's given me something to really look forward to. And yes, working on quiet footwork and using myself with care and precision on the wall is something that I have been doing on my little wall now. And I know that I have to avoid slopers. I can't grab them with my hand. It just, there's certain things I can't do. But when you say that the knee will get better, I could give you such a hug. I can't tell you.
You were fairly new to climbing, and so you're fairly new to climbing through injuries. But this is the thing that you learn, is that they do pass. You do look back and you think, remember that time when I was injured? So
I'll tell you,
all the best to you for the future.
when I'm doing 7s at 70, I'll buy you a nice cup of coffee.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. What about Janina? The herniated disc. That's really, really difficult. So is the herniated disc something that is going to be operated on, or is there any bright future for this, or is that just something that you're going to have to work around forever? It's difficult.
I work with a therapist, and I do not go for operation, and it gets better. And first week until 8 months to go back for climbing, and it's amazing to do it again.
Yeah.
But I think it's a mental part, because every movements are really slow. The muscles doesn't work like they should, and
Yeah.
the problem is I don't want to fall, because I'm so afraid to have a second part in my back. On the other hand, I need that sports, because otherwise I have big problems with the depressions, and this is my only light in a day or in a month to go out in the mountains.
I know things are difficult at the moment because of lockdowns and so on, but have you got access to doing any roped climbing, perhaps top roping?
Yeah, we have the opportunity to go out to have some top rope.
Yeah, so definitely I would recommend that certainly while you're getting back into it and you are building strength up again and becoming more free and able to move, don't put yourself in a situation where you're also scared of falling, because falling will be dangerous for you. Stick to your top roping for a bit and see how you go. You can still get a lot of satisfaction out of that if you view it as steps towards your bigger goals. I wish you all the best with that. That's a really difficult situation.
Yeah, normally I do a lot of lead climbing and multi-pitch, so it's new to go only out for top rope, and
but
to be so scared of falling and of do some wrong movement.
If you view it as an opportunity, though, to actually try harder climbs, because if you're top roping, you can really push yourself in terms of difficulty without worrying about impact. And then it will improve your climbing generally when you get back to leading as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so too. Next one, Erica. Have you ever had a period of low motivation due to injury, illness? Yes. And if so, how did you deal with it, overcome it? Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. Both of my serious leg injuries, they were so painful. I couldn't have my leg vertical for a long, long time. So everyone was like, oh, you can just fingerboard and you can get really strong. And I couldn't. I had to be lying down the entire time. And that was terribly hard. I really, really struggled with that. But that's nothing compared to low motivation with illness. It's so difficult when you're dealing with it. It comes again and you just know what it means and you know how long it's going to take you out climbing, and it is depressing. But I have learned that these things all pass, even the things that never truly pass. They do change, they shift, and if you can just keep ticking over, even if it's just a little bit here and there, then it's like the engine idling and you're ready to rev when you feel better. So that's probably the best way I can describe it. But yeah, try and keep the engine ticking over, even if you're going nowhere. More about the mental side of things. Chronic conditions. Okay, Natasha. Yes, I'm assuming that you have some similar issue with a chronic condition. Yes. Is it getting harder and harder for you each time because your episodes of dealing with your chronic condition are longer or worse than they were before? If you don't have to talk if you want to just type a yes or a.
No, well, I think you actually the question before was quite similar, really, but it's just, yeah, sometimes you just have this sort of here we go again, and
Yes.
like you say, knowing that you're going to be out for a while, and knowing that you need to take it easy, and you've got to you just get back so many steps each time, and so yeah, that was it really, and just sort of trying to stay motivated.
So Natasha, have you had periods of time where you've felt good and then punctuated by some problem that keeps reappearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got hypermobility, so I've had to have various I've had foot operations, and I just have to look in the wrong direction and I sprain something. So yeah, it has been quite a few. But it does, it is very up and down. It is very up and down. So it's not, I'm lucky in that respect. It's not.
I do think that this is a difficult one. I've had friends who've had multiple injuries and have ended up stopping climbing just because they couldn't cope with the disappointment of it happening to them again. But that's never happened to me, and I think it's because I just love climbing so much that I'm never going to give it up, even no matter what. And so what I do in the times when it's difficult, like at the moment I'm not well, I'm really having a bit of a rough time, and lockdown also isn't helping. But you just have to think back to all the good times and think forward to all the good times that you've got ahead of you, and let that motivate you. And if you enjoy climbing, just being out, moving, being in beautiful places, being with your friends, fresh air, or just enjoying moving and using your body, you have to focus on that and not be too hung up on always performance. I think focusing too much on performance can be very negative if you're suffering from a chronic condition, which is probably why I never did get into those World Cup semis and finals. But there you go. It's made me happier not to worry about not achieving those goals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
And big sympathies and a big hug. I feel your pain.
There's a great talk on our YouTube channel as well, Natasha, about finding your why, which is what obviously Naomi was just getting at there, and helps you to sort of figure that out. So yeah, I don't know if Rebecca, you could put a link into the chat. I don't know how. I'm not. If I use any more of my internet, it'll shut me out. Can't see any more questions. Is there any more? Anyone got their hand up?
Everybody's shy.
Nope. That's great.
Perry again.
Oh, there's a hand. There's a hand.
Sorry, I wasn't having much time. Right, can I ask another question, which is kind of about the mental side of things, but it's sort of a bit different. It's about if you've had an injury which is, for whatever reason, that's taken a while to recover, and it's not something simple like a break, which is just it's either broken or it's not, so it's like a ligament or something like that. How do you deal with the sort of feeling of having lost confidence in that part of your body and sort of, getting back into using it properly?
Right, okay, so
feeling it's gonna go...
no, I know what you mean, because for instance, that bad leg break that I had, I've got a metal plate in there holding it all together. The ligaments were badly damaged, and it is never going to be the same again. I can't do things on my left leg that I can do on my right leg. And that's however long ago it was now. It must be 14, 15 years ago. So it's never, ever going to be the same as it was. But you just have to work around it. And there's all sorts of research and data that shows, say, for instance, people who've had slap tears in their shoulders and all the other muscles and ligaments and so on can compensate, and you can learn to operate fantastic as a climber without ever having surgery or having that repaired. And there's all sorts of things that you can do to compensate, and it doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to climb well or get strong. With your wrist, for instance, it's going to take you to strengthen everything else around, and slowly but surely, hopefully, that will allow you to operate in a way that you're happy with. But there's certain things that you just have to accept and never going to be like they were before the injury. Sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear. But the good news is that your body is amazing, and it will find ways around things if you teach them to do an extra job that they weren't necessarily designed for. Any more for any more? I think we have another minute.
I think if that's all the questions, we just have to say thanks to Naomi. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. And I think there was loads of fabulous questions there as well. So thanks to everyone who's attended and got involved and asked a load of questions, because without you, we need you in the audience asking these questions to get all of that knowledge out of Naomi's head. So thank you so much, Naomi. Oh, here's Jordan.
It's a pleasure. He's making an appearance.
I just come downstairs.
Hi.
Hi.
What have I missed? Have I missed?